Hello and welcome back to Green Money Momentum, where we talk about market movements, making money, and money momentum. I'm your host, Trevor, and we are here for yet another daily talk of stock. And the markets were pretty even today. So a near 50-50 split, but to be exact, we had 56% in the winning category, while we saw that 42% were losers today. So overall, the markets were more bullish than bearish today, which just continues the trend that we have been seeing over the last month, which is bullish. And so we know with the fear and greed index, we went from being all the way at levels of extreme fear at 4 all the way to the levels we are at now in greed at 69. And this is because overall the markets have been getting really good news around tariffs, inflation, and the overall economy seems to be getting better. Plus, we had the really great news just the other day. As we know, President Trump has visited the Middle East, and we could see that he has secured a massive economic commitment, $1.2 trillion. So that is pushing the markets up as well. And now many investors are at that spot where they're wondering, are we about to see the big dip coming up because the markets have pushed so much recently, or do we still have higher to run on the markets? So there's a lot of nervousness in the markets. And I just want to pull up this chart. I pulled this up in yesterday's video, but I want to remind investors where we may be at currently. So a lot of plays are starting to get a little overvalued, starting to get high on the RSI and high on the MACD. So in the very short term, there is a possibility of retraction. We just talked about this yesterday, saying that a red day had to be coming soon. And well, today in some of our plays was decently red. But again, the markets 50-50 overall, but I know a lot of investors are nervous because earlier this year we have seen a lot of retraction. We were on that nasty downtick, but the trend has overall seemed to change, and it does seem throughout the year things will get better, especially with the possible Fed rate cut coming up here in the near future. So when we just look at the psychology of a market cycle, where I believe we are at this moment is between optimism and belief. So the markets again came off that nasty downtick. We were recently in disbelief. This was where many thought the markets were only going to slide down right after Liberation Day. There was so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt and panic, and some were calling for that blown out recession. But then we've started to see the hope recovery, and now we are starting to push up higher, where again, I believe that currently we are at the state of optimism. But that is just my opinion. I'd be curious to hear where everyone else thinks we are. So please drop a comment down in the section below where you think we're at. If we're on the beginning of a big uptick, if we're around hope, optimism, belief, or if we're at the tail end coming off denial and panic. I would be curious to hear what everyone else has to say. And so when it comes to bulls and bears in the market, we're going to be talking about a couple different plays here. And the first being a bear, Big Bear AI, but we are bullish on the Big Bear. And so we're going to be talking about Big Bear, DJT, D-Wave Quantum, and Soundhound. So stick around for all those plays, some very fun, volatile stocks that have seen a lot of momentum in the last year. But we're going to start out here again with Big Bear AI. So we saw Big Bear push down today. We lost 23 cents in the Big Bear, down by $5.97. And you see this line here that is drawn out. This is just to show a support and resistance level in the Big Bear. So we were just talking about this in the last video and how Big Bear has been pushing up. So Big Bear got all the way up to around $4.23, I believe, yesterday, almost to this major level of resistance right here around the $4.50 range, but was rejected. So what I was saying yesterday is that with Big Bear, it looks like we are on an upwards bullish pattern up. So we could see this rising level of support in the Big Bear, and we got rejected again right around 450. The next level of support was right around 375. We have broken below that. I could see some more bleeding in the Big Bear, but I do think we will remain on this upwards bullish pattern. So I could see Big Bear dropping down to about 335 or around 325. But myself, I am staying bullish on the Big Bear. And while the contracts are cheap, I bought some in the money contracts expiring later in September. And so I actually added a little bit to my position today in the Big Bear. And that is because overall, I do believe that the macroeconomic trends will get better. So again, the news is getting better. Market sentiment seems to be getting better. And despite some plays being overvalued on all these indicators right now, Big Bear itself still has a little bit ways to run before it does get to those overbought territories. So here on the RSI, we could see we are at 57. And then when it comes to the MACD, it does look like we have a ways to push up there as well. And talking about macroeconomic conditions and trends and everything like that, of course, with the big news happening in the Middle East, we have a lot of CEOs out there as well. And a big CEO to note here, this is going to be very bullish for Big Bear. We have the CEO, Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir, out in the Middle East right now. So out there with all the other big players close to Trump, we know Palantir this last year has seen a lot of value and momentum. But why it's so significant for Big Bear is because, of course, Palantir does a lot of similar work that Big Bear does, and they've actually partnered up. So they have a strategic partnership, and with Palantir being out there as one of the big CEOs and the government securing such a big economic commitment, you better bet that Palantir is going to be earning more money and that Big Bear may be earning more money right alongside them, especially if there's going to be a contract or something they work on with. And again, Big Bear being close to Palantir, well, Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp, we could see that he is close to Trump. So he's one of the selected few that is out there in the Middle East. That is huge. We know the CEO of Big Bear, Kevin. And so with that being said, that is a big positive for Big Bear right there. And so Big Bear, again, returning to the technical analysis, I see ourselves continuing on this bullish upwards trend. We know with the Big Bear as well, they've been under a lot of fire the last couple months from lawsuits. And so these lawsuits, a lot of time has passed. We could see that investors are still investing in the Big Bear. It does look like investor confidence is going up and overall market sentiment is going up. And so talking about market sentiment and macroeconomic trends, of course, DJT, the president, has a lot to do with that, and DJT has a stock, and so that stock is Trump Media and Technology Group, and we have been covering this stock extensively over the last year. And during the last year, what we have been saying is DJT is right around this major level of support. So we could see that multiple times on the chart. This stock, a very volatile, high-flying stock, has gained all the way up to the $40, $50, $60 range, and would fall back down, but would tap right on this support level. And so the only times we fell below the support was right before the elections, and then most recently when we have had the nasty downwards trend. But what is interesting is just looking at technical analysis. Again, we're riding right along this line. And if we just make this line here, we could see it appears that we may have a descending triangle situation coming. And so DJT being a meme stock, again, we could see here we are coming into that descending triangle. And so just the theory there, just a theory, but more than anything, just looking past that theory of technical analysis, what I really want to go over here, what I think is most important and what I haven't stopped thinking about since I touched on this yesterday, and that is that we have their Q4 earnings for Trump Media and Technology coming out in 12 days. And with this stock, when we look at their revenue, they have never reported an earnings much above $1 million. So most times this company has reported earnings, it has been right under $1 million, which is pretty crazy for a company with as big of a market cap as they have. So they have a $5.51 billion market cap. But what I think is really positive about this is currently the stock of DJT sits in the $20 range, so right at $25.05, and we could see again on this major support we have held pretty strong. So with this being said, if at any times, whether it is this earnings report or one in the future, if DJT comes out with an earnings report that crushes it, we could see a massive massive uptick in this stock. We could see a lot of volatility because the company will be expanding, growing, and getting better, which is what we have been talking about on this channel for a long time. This is a new company, and they have been growing and expanding, adding a lot of different facets and diversification to this company. So they're not just a Truth Social platform, but they also have big cryptocurrency investments. They are working alongside crypto.com. They just put out some ETFs, also a big crypto investment with Charles Schwab. And then also they have their streaming service on Roku, and the app is growing. So Truth Social is becoming a big news network. So Trump puts out his most important truths out there, and so a lot of users joining Truth Social. So that may come up in future earnings reports when it comes to just revenue of advertisers using Truth Social and all that. This upcoming earnings report, I think, is still going to be low. So I don't expect a big earnings report. This is, again, for the tail end of 2024. And funny enough about this company, they have actually released their Q1 earnings for 2025. It did come in disappointing. So forecasting their Q4, I don't think it will be necessarily a great earnings either. But what is positive about that is DJT investors already expect that. So those who are already in DJT know that the earnings haven't been great, and we are investing into this company for what this company could be over the long term. And so with DJT, again, there is this possible of a descending triangle, but overall, we are sitting right on the support, and I currently am holding DJT shares for the long term. Talking about earnings reports, we recently saw D-Wave Quantum, ticker symbol being QBTS, release their earnings, and they killed it. So with DJT, what we want to see is something similar to what D-Wave Quantum just pulled off. So with DJT having such a low revenue, under $1 million a quarter, if they just hit 1.6 million or 2 million revenue, they are literally doubling their revenue. Massive. And that is exactly what D-Wave Quantum just did. They did a 4x on their revenue. And so for the first quarter of 2025, they exploded. They hit a revenue of 15 million, which was huge because this company was expected to hit a revenue of 10 million. And because of that, this company did have a big uptick. And so we actually called this on this channel. We were saying how D-Wave Quantum had the potential to have a big squeeze because of their earnings. Because when we look at this stock over the last year, we could see these lines drawn out. This is just to show the rising support and the rising resistance. And so the trend in D-Wave Quantum has actually been very predictable. We saw earlier in January, we were at this higher level of resistance. We did have a cool off. And then with their March earnings, we did go right back to that level of resistance, had another cool off. And then recently we did have their big earnings. And now what I have been saying, I recently took out about 92% of my stake in Quantum. So I'm a big time investor in Quantum. I believe in Quantum over the long term, but I see this as an opportunity to take profit because the last two times we got to this higher level of resistance, we were rejected and did fall back down. And so with D-Wave Quantum, we have been holding on this for a little bit. So we did hit this big rise up to the rising support on May 8th, which was last Thursday. Now a week later, we are still sitting at these highs. And so right now, it is a pretty interesting spot because the markets, again, are looking overvalued. D-Wave Quantum is one of those plays. So again, on the higher level of resistance, when we look at the RSI, it's looking pretty overvalued there. And then we could see the last time we were at this spot on the MACD, we did see a sell-off. So I do think that we will see a sell-off in D-Wave Quantum. That's at least what I am hoping for because I have taken a lot of profits on this rise. I do believe the upwards bullish trend will continue, But D-Wave did hit their 52-week high today. So the stock did reach up to $12. So there is the possibility that we do have some new price discovery and D-Wave Quantum starts to really rip up from here, especially if macroeconomic trends continue to stay bullish and we don't see an impending big red day anytime soon. So now talking about red days, that's going to bring us to our last stock for today, which is Soundhound AI. I am very bullish on this ticker, but they did have a red day today. So the stock went down by 6%, lost 72 cents in value, and is now sitting at $11. And so this is another stock that is right alongside the same trends as the other. So like we were talking about with Big Bear, how Big Bear has started to rise back up and how they have found a rising level of support where it does look like that exact same thing for Soundhound. So we have been rising in Soundhound recently. We got up to these levels around $12, which when we do draw out a support and resistance level, let's take that out. Let's see where we're at. Oh no. So I'm still learning this drawing, guys. Bear with me. We can see that this is a major level of support as Soundhound support after the big rise up to $24 really does lie right around $11 to $15. So it does look like we were rejected at that level today, but with Soundhound, we are starting to rise up in a bullish trend as well. So we may see the stock trail back off to around $9.80 or so. I was actually thinking about investing into Soundhound today, but I figured I should stay patient because again, the markets are looking a bit overvalued. I've added to a lot of, I've taken some profits on some pretty good positions, but I am also heavily invested in many other positions. So I was adding to the markets weeks ago when fear, uncertainty, and doubt was highest. Right now, we are at an unpredictable level, but I do think we could continue to rise from here. And if you don't know what Soundhound is, the reason why we are so bullish on Soundhound is because they are another great company that is continuing to beat earnings. And so Soundhound has been gaining a lot of value. They have some very high quarterlies when it comes to revenue. And what I really want to highlight here with Soundhound is not only has their revenue increased, so not only are their quarterlies getting better, but the most positive thing about Soundhound is that Soundhound has changed. They have really increased in customers. And so just as this article says, the company said that no one customer made up more than 10% of its first quarter revenue, showing continued diversification of customers. And the reason why this is so important, when we started covering Soundhound just about a year ago, at one point Soundhound was earning all their revenue from mainly one customer. So they had one customer accounting for about 90% of their revenue, where now we could see that no more than one customer could account for more than 10% of revenue. And that's huge because myself, I own a business outside of this channel. I make a lot of different ticket sales, and I know exactly what that means. You want to have more customers because you don't want to rely all on one customer in case you lose that contract. So Soundhound continuing to gain more customers. They work with a lot of big customers in the automotive industry and also the restaurant industry. And again, their revenue is improving quarter after quarter. So myself, I am staying bullish on Soundhound. I'm also staying bullish on all the other plays that we talked about here. So I'm staying bullish on DJT. I am very bullish on Big Bear. I think we have a lot of room to run for the Big Bear, and I am staying bullish on the overall markets. And with a D-Wave Quantum, I'm staying bullish, but I do think we will see a short-term drop. Now, overall markets, again, could be getting ahead of themselves, so we may see some short-term drops in all of these plays, but what is positive is it does appear that we do have some rising supports, and the overall market sentiment has gotten a lot better. So the trends are changing in the markets, and despite, again, some plays getting overvalued, they could sit there for a lot longer. But I would be curious to hear what everyone else has to say. So please let me know if you're bullish or bearish on the markets, if you're sitting in cash, if you're invested in any of these four plays here or any other plays. So please drop that comment, please leave a like, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I thank you guys all so much for joining me today. Again, the internet is a big, vast place. There are literally millions of YouTubers and millions of views out out there on YouTube. So there's a million places that you could spend your time, but you choose to spend it with me. And as a creator, I genuinely thank you for that. And I enjoy the time that we spend together talking about stocks. So thank you guys all so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.